This is the Farm Monitor. For over 50 years, your source for agribusiness news and features from around the Southeast and across the country, focusing on one of the nation's top industries, agriculture. The Farm Monitor is produced by one of the largest general farm organizations, the Georgia Farm Bureau. Now here are your hosts, Ray DeLesio and Kenny Burgamy.
Welcome. Glad you were a part of the Farm Monitor, the show that deals with anything and everything related to Georgia agriculture and beyond. I'm Ray DeLesio.
And I'm Kenny Burgamy. To echo what Ray said, happy to have you with us for the half hour. And as always, we've got a great show for you. Coming up, how much do you know about FSA, the Farm Service Agency? We'll dive into the programs they'll offer and how they can lend a helping hand when crisis hits, no matter the size of your operation. Just when you thought peanuts couldn't get any more water efficient, new data would suggest otherwise. We'll break down the numbers and hear from one producer on how technology is helping them save money in the long run. These stories and so much more start right now on the Farm Monitor.
Well, between escalating input costs and the constant threat of natural disasters, farmers have plenty to worry about on a daily basis. That's why it's important they know all about the many programs the Farm Service Agency provides, the majority of which can help relieve some of those concerns. Damon Jones has more from Banks County.
With so much uncertainty in the world today, farmers are looking for a little peace of mind when putting their crops into the ground. And that's exactly what the Farm Service Agency is looking to provide with not only low-interest loans, but also programs designed to safeguard producers.
Right now, as of the recording of this, our loans are hover around 3%. The private market's closer to 9%. And so it's very important that our producers are aware of the resources that are available to them. When we think about FSA, a lot of folks think it's only loans. We do a lot of disaster support. Think about if a hurricane were to happen or some type of natural disaster. I think about ERP, for example, our emergency relief program. It's a program that we provided since May. Over $140 million to the state of Georgia, to our producers.
And that's just one of the many opportunities farmers are encouraged to explore with the FSA, no matter how big or small their operation.
It's for everybody. If you're a dairy producer or a row crop producer, livestock, any type of producer in the state, even if you were on 1/100th of an acre, I bet we have something for you. It's really important that our producers, both current and future, reach out to their local FSA office to figure out how can we help. I like to say, think about it in terms of a tools and a tool belt. Know what tools are available to you at any given time.
And that's especially important this year as the hot, dry summer conditions have put a real strain on several commodities around the state. And it's vital the agency knows just how much different areas have been affected.
Yeah, I think the number one thing, given how dry we experienced some weather patterns in summer, I encourage every producer to report your drought status. If you're unaware how to do that, call your local office or go to farmers.gov or Google report drought status USDA. It's very important that all of our producers are self-reporting so that we can get the very best information as we determine who is in a dry status versus who is in a drought status.
That will also put your information into the database, which will help keep you up to date on the latest programs that could benefit your bottom line.
Right now, actually, if you think about a week ago, we increased the payments for our animals. It hovers about 175% more than the average payout was before. So these sorts of changes, these sorts of information is why it's so important that we have the best information, the contact information from our producers.
So between the low interest loans and multiple relief programs, the FSA's goal is giving farmers their best chance to succeed and keeping the state's #1 industry thriving.
We have over 60 offices in the state of Georgia, over 300 employees. And at the end of the day, our employees are focused on how can we support the producer. In a lot of ways, we feel like the relationship between our producers and the Farm Service Agency, their local office, they're inextricably linked. One success is contingent upon the other.
Reporting from Banks County, I'm Damon Jones for the Farm Monitor.
It's a fact. Farmers are able to produce more with less these days than ever before. As John Holcomb reports, that's certainly the case for peanut producers. As new data would suggest, they're using less of our world's most precious resource, water.
It's easy to look across this peanut field and take it for granted, as most don't get to see the hard work and dedication that goes into it. However, according to new data, thanks to research, smart farming practices, and new varieties, peanut farmers are producing higher yields with less inputs, specifically water, a true testament of how dedicated the industry is to the land and its resources.
Peanuts use about 12% of the amount of water of some other common tree nuts, specifically almonds, pistachios, and walnuts. We only use 3.2 gallons of water to produce a 1 ounce serving size, where these other nuts require somewhere around 25 gallons of water to produce a 1 ounce serving size. The way we're getting there is because of increases in yields and other efficiencies, and it's exciting to see the progress we're making.
Water, of course, is a vital but limited resource that all life needs to survive, and is something producers need to grow their crops. However, rainfall isn't always dependable, which is why irrigation is a key component of many producers' operations, like Casey Cox Kerr, a 6th-generation farmer who says that water is obviously necessary to grow peanuts, but is more crucial during certain times.
The frequency of our irrigation completely depends on the weather and also the crop type. So for example, with peanuts, they require a certain amount of water during the growing season. It's usually a combination of rainfall and irrigation, but there are also these really critical stages of the crop that and critical fruiting periods that require a certain amount of water for optimal development. We really focus on trying to make sure we are taking care of the crop when we don't have the sufficient rainfall to meet the crop's needs, and that's when we decide to irrigate.
To be more efficient with their water, over the years, they've started utilizing different tools and technologies on their farm to help them determine when a crop needs water and how much it needs.
We utilize soil moisture sensors, which is great because that I can use my phone and pull up an app and look and see the actual moisture in our field and make a decision about whether we need to irrigate or stop irrigating. And then we can actually control those irrigation systems from the very same app. So that's just one tool, and there are several others.
Being as efficient as possible, of course, is never a bad thing. But in today's economic and social climate, not only does it help their bottom line, it proves to the world just how committed peanut producers are to preserving the land.
Farmers all across the country, and especially here in Georgia, are facing the impacts of rising input costs and just higher prices on everything. So being able to optimize our water use and not have all of those energy costs is a huge savings for us, and that's something that impacts every farmer. Even just not having to turn on the pivot one time is a major savings. Another aspect of that too is consumers are increasingly concerned about and interested in sustainable practices on the farm, and that's another thing where peanuts have a great story to tell.
Reporting in Camilla for the Farm Monitor, I'm John Holcomb.
After the break, so many historical treasures to see, including this early 20th century grist mill. A trip to Raven County for some Appalachian culture when the Farm Monitor continues.
Hi, I'm Lily Baucom, and I'm the Executive Director of the Georgia Foundation for Agriculture. I'm here to invite you to our signature fundraiser, Picnic on the Farm. Join us on September 17th for a one-of-a-kind agriculture and culinary experience you won't forget. Georgia's best chefs fill the picnic baskets for our signature adventure. Guests will receive a blanket and a picnic basket with a 3-course chef-created lunch to share with friends or family anywhere on the farm. This year, we are celebrating all things about Georgia's newest commodity, wine and grapes. Picnic on the Farm will be held on Saturday, September 17th from 2 to 4 p.m. at Ingelheim Vineyard in Ellijay, against the beautiful backdrop of North Georgia's wine country. Guests will enjoy live music, farm tours, a silent auction, games, and kids' activities. Make a weekend of it and explore what North Georgia has to offer. Ingelheim Vineyard is one of Gilmer County's most scenic vineyards, located just off Apple Highway, aka Highway 52. Ticket prices begin at $75 for a 2-person basket, and all proceeds benefit the Georgia Foundation for Agriculture. Hope you can join us. Thank you, and see you there.
Horticulture is the science and art of growing plants, fruits, vegetables, ornamentals, and beyond. But in the horticulture department at the University of Georgia, having a green thumb is just the beginning. Students can choose to study plant growth and development in a lab, develop business skills for the green industry, or take a creative approach as a garden curator. College of Agricultural and Environmental Sciences faculty provide students with a Tier 1 horticulture education, thanks to the department's diverse research and outreach backgrounds. At CAES, we are responding to the need to feed the world's growing population by producing healthy plant varieties and improving crop yields. We are addressing the pressures of climate change by developing the latest technologies to grow crops in limited spaces and in soil-free conditions. We are improving urban landscapes by breeding city-friendly and drought-tolerant landscape plants. Our research extends beyond the field, improving the shelf life of produce so it stays fresh longer. Through a variety of degree options and unique hands-on experiences, UGA Horticulture students have endless opportunities to learn. In addition to undergraduate programs that focus on organic food production, urban forestry, and greenhouse nursery management, students can acquire certificates in entrepreneurship, sustainability, or international agriculture. We have a variety of highly ranked graduate programs for students who want to take their existing degrees to the next level. And while our reach is wide, our department is tight-knit. Students learn from each other and push each other towards success. At CAES, students work side by side with faculty who are performing cutting-edge research in a variety of areas. As a result, our students graduate as top competitors in their field, ready to become leaders and improve our world. Join us as we commit to growing the future of agriculture in the environment.
A church bell rings on a hillside, while a man enjoys some alone time fiddling away on a cigar box. The Foxfire Museum and Heritage Center in Rabun County. It's a fascinating glimpse of earlier generations, a time capsule, so to speak, that captures the sights, sounds, and lifestyle of the North Georgia mountains from the 1820s to the 1940s.
We have a mission, and it's to preserve the culture of the Southern Appalachian Mountains, and that's what we do at the museum. And we also want to teach people about that history and culture. So we are very specific about what we do. And really, most of the research we do occurs in our own collection. We have well over 2,000 interviews, 100,000 images, 3,000 hours of audio. So when we want to confirm something, we look within ourselves for the most part because we have the best collection dealing with Southern Appalachian culture anywhere.
My grandparents were from North Georgia, and every time I walk around this place and smell the fire from the blacksmith or hear him banging on a piece of metal or hear the church bell ring, it takes me back to a time in my life that was so important to me. And I think that that's what resonates with so many people when they come to Foxfire. It really takes them back to what they may have either heard from their grandparents or may have been passed down through the generations to their family. And so, it's kind of like a song. Many times a song will take you back to a certain time in life. And I think for so many people, when they walk on the grounds of Foxfire and they see the different buildings and read about the different people, it takes them back to a different time in life.
To appreciate the Foxfire experience, it's important to know its origin. In 1966, a local group of high school students at Rabun Gap Nacoochee School needed inspiration and were assigned the task of interviewing family, friends, and neighbors about early Appalachian culture. Years down the road, those interviews became a series of magazines which resulted in the now popular Foxfire books. In 1974, royalties from the first book were used to purchase the land which now houses the museum and the surrounding buildings.
So we have over 100 acres of mountainside property, goes all the way up to Black Rock Mountain State Park. And the students decided to create a space for their learning, for future students, and for their community as well. So they converted this place, it was an old orchard, into a learning center. And they salvaged historic buildings in their community, dismantled them and rebuilt them here. And now we have over 20 historic structures that were all constructed by both those students and their community members.
So Foxfire preserves how people lived in this area many, many years ago. It gives them a glimpse into what it was like being in the mountains, surviving in the mountains, living day to day in the mountains. You learn about what it meant to live in a one-room cabin with a family and survive, and the uniqueness of the culture, how they preserved the way of life that sustained them.
Sustainability, of course, often associated with farming and agriculture. Another attractive feature about Foxfire that officials have gone to great lengths to preserve.
Well, we have a lot of outbuildings, that are associated with any farm. We have 2 barns that are really interesting to look at that are made out of logs. The one right near us here, the Beck Barn, is really a large barn for the time period. It's about 1900. And it's roughly 30 by 30 feet, and it's called a cross hall design, which is not very common for this area. And it would store your animals and implements. And typically in this area, your barn was more important than your house and was bigger than your house. The gristmill is awesome. It's the first building that was brought up here. The students didn't know what a gristmill was, so they learned about it talking to Aunt Airy. And so they got permission to acquire it, and they took it apart, brought it up here. And it was actually made in the 1930s, but it was made in a style that would have been consistent with the 1830s. And you're mostly raising corn. That was a primary crop here. And people were using animals for a long, long time. Even in the 1970s, when students were doing interviews, there were still people plowing with mules and farming with other animals. Even oxen were still being used. So it's still kind of a transition period here. And although tractors were available, people were reluctant to let go of their mules. They were just fond of that type of power and were loyal to their animals, which is pretty neat.
We have this massive collection of oral history records dating back to the early 60s when the students first started that capture historic farming practices. So a lot of the people they interviewed were still practicing self-sustainability. They were still growing gardens with heirloom seeds. They were still raising livestock and using very old tools from earlier centuries. And so all of that got preserved in our archive, but it still continued in practice, both through the people who come here to demonstrate and through the ways that we engage with research and public programming. So, there are so many components of both history and agriculture and culture in general that are just intertwined and all come together in this one place.
Well, folks, don't forget, if you missed any part of this story or others on today's program, you can still see them in their entirety at our YouTube channel. Plenty of content and a variety of subjects to choose from going all the way back to 2009.
And while you're there, keep clicking and like the Farm Monitor Facebook page. Also, if you have a story idea, send us a message either on Facebook or at the address on your screen. That is news@farm-monitor.com. Up next, do any of your trees on your property look like this? A tar-like substance oozing from the trunk. What is that stuff? And should you be concerned about it? Extension Corner with Paul Pugliese when the Farm Monitor continues.
Hi, Paul Pugliese here with the University of Georgia Extension. Today we're looking at a tree that has a problem that I get a lot of calls about. On old oak trees, a lot of other hardwoods like maples, poplars, and elms, sometimes we get calls about sap oozing out of the trunk of the tree. And we get a lot of calls about these, especially in the springtime when there's a lot more rain and wet weather. We'll see this happen quite often. This particular disorder is called bacterial wetwood. Sometimes you'll see it called slime flux in the literature. But this particular disease is actually sap literally coming out of the tree. And it's caused by bacteria living inside the trunk of the tree. The ooze actually comes out of the heartwood or the sapwood of the tree. And that sapwood may have a void in it that has water that gets captured inside the hollow part of the tree. And that gets colonized by different bacteria and yeast that get in there, and they're basically growing off of the natural sugars that occur in that sap. And because it's enclosed inside the tree, it creates sort of anaerobic conditions. There's not a lot of oxygen in there. And over time, it will actually start to ferment inside the trunk of the tree. And you'll get gases like carbon dioxide and methane that'll form in there and build up a lot of pressure. And over time, that pressure will force the sap to come out of the tree. So this is something that happens quite often. You can imagine there's a lot of different trees that have hollow centers where there's enough void in there for water to get in there. In fact, a lot of times the fermentation in there, it comes out, it almost smells like beer or wine. So if you get close enough, yeah, you can sort of smell that beer type fermented smell. The other thing that we see associated with this is a lot of insects are attracted to that because, well, who doesn't like beer, right? And there's lots of sugar in there that the insects are attracted to. So you'll see carpenter ants crawling up and down going after that. Other insects, a lot of flying insects like beetles, wasps, bees will be attracted to it. And in this case, we can look up here and there's slugs all up in where it's coming out of the tree. There's a lot of slugs associated with this one. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can spray to fix this. There's no treatment. Nothing that we can do about this because it's inside the tree and it's encapsulated or protected by the bark of the tree. And at the end of the day, it's really not something that we worry about a whole lot. And most arborists and most of the studies have looked at this and have actually shown that the fermentation and the bacteria that are in there may actually help the tree resist rotting, and it really is not a good condition for a lot of pathogens or diseases or wood rotting organisms to be able to survive in that environment. So in some ways, it almost helps the tree defend against certain problems like that. But again, it's something that we need to keep a close eye on and watch it. And it could be an indication that there is something else wrong with that tree. Again, if there's an old wound that's associated with this, a lot of times you'll see the sap coming out of that wound. And maybe it was where an old branch was cut out. In this case, you can see there was an old branch stub there. Maybe it wasn't pruned properly, it didn't heal right. So that is another issue, but it's not related to, or the bacteria that's oozing out is not a problem for the tree itself. And of course, whenever you have big branches being pruned out of the tree, make sure you make good, proper pruning cuts. A certified arborist should be able to do that and avoid wounding that tree and creating a problem that could lead to bacterial wetwood in the future. And if you have any questions regarding your trees, you can feel free to call your local county extension office at 1-800-ASK-UGA1, or go to our website and continue to follow us on the Georgia Farm Monitor.
Paul, thanks so much. And as always, thank you for making this show possible.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time right here on the Farm Monitor. Hope you have a great week.